must be cautious.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Well, hello and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, that little slice of Star Wars heaven that comes at you every week. And I am just one of the hosts here, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing, and I'm so excited to have with me the one and only, is that a cat ATT on your t-shirt, John Mills?
Yes, it's my Cat Walker t-shirt. So it's pretty great. And listen, the only time it's said on screen is in the old Kenner commercial, AT-AT Walker. It's going to be an AT-AT Walker. I don't care how many of you nerds try to tell me that it's AT-AT. It's AT-AT. It's always going to be AT-AT, and that's why Cat is the best version.
Well, we don't have time to argue the merits of whether or not that's actually the case, but we would love to argue with you all over social media. We're at the Jedi Masters on Twitter or X or whatever that is. You can find the entire network at Join Nerd Party. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party. Instagram at The Nerd Party. You also find us online at thenerdparty.com. So please check us out on all of those places. Interact with us. We'd love it. And, if you like the show, help us out. Give us some reviews or ratings over on Apple Podcasts so more people find us in that general malaise of Star Wars podcasts that is very hard to see through. But John, talking about being hard to see through is the place emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically that we find our character of Crosshair as a solitary clone in, I think, a true standout episode for the season already. And it's only 3 episodes in. I have friends who, didn't really love the first 2 episodes, but thought this was fantastic. And I think that this is just, to me, a wonderful juxtaposition to those first 2 episodes, which are all about this family that's being created. And this episode does such a great job of just showing us the dire straits that we find Crosshair because of the decision he made to, stay loyal. And then, of course, we also know that he's had his loyalty ramped up through some torture. So this episode really is magnificent.
This is a tremendous short film, is what this is. And it's very rare for a short film to feel so complete inside of half an hour. But it's a perfect short film. You have an entire arc. You have all of the backstory you need. You have all the character development you could possibly want. You have a question that's put out there. You have a character going through. I'm going to be boring talking about this episode because revisiting it is as every bit as wonderful as the first time I watched it. Where, while I may have shown some praise to Ruins of War and Spoils of War, if you want to come at me to your point and be like, oh, Bad Batch Season 2, this is the first episode I will generally talk about because there are so many things about it that just I cannot walk away from. Specifically because Crosshair's the traitor to us, to the audience, to the main characters, to everybody that matters to us. And you feel such a deep, abiding sympathy for him.
Yeah.
And conversely, a deep sorrow for Commander Cody, the guy that tried to kill Obi-Wan Kenobi in episode 3.
Yeah.
And you actually wind up feeling bad for Cody because he's the one that says that they have to live with the decisions they make.
Yeah.
But we know Order 66 wasn't really a decision, but Cody has to feel like it was. And there you go. Sorry, I know. Spoilers for how I feel about the episode right there.
No, I like the way in which you bring that up, especially, because I think one of the beauties here of this is bringing in Cody. And that, when he talks about the idea of the fact that, you have you have to live with this. It reminds me so. This episode reminds me of the Deep Space Nine episode Pale Moonlight, because when he makes that speech, it's like, it's Sisko at the end saying, "I can live with it. I can live with it. I think I can live with it." And Cody then, of course, makes the decision, to walk away at the end. And I think there's just something so interesting about that, because you're seeing the beauty of the clones, and we even talked about this, is the fact that they could make their own decisions. And that individuality that they have had cultivated because of the Jedi has allowed so many of them to do exactly what we see Cody do in this episode, which is to realize that he's been played, to realize that he was wrong, to realize that he's made the wrong choice, and then to rectify that and go and make the right choice, which is by abandoning his post, by abandoning, who he's, called to be, or was called to be, because of his creation. And then at the end of the episode, we see the juxtaposition again between the clones who are made to be this, and now the people who are willingly choosing to be this. Mm-hmm. And it's, we talked about in that last episode of the terrifying nature of the Empire. This is another episode that shows you how much more terrifying it is, because you're having people willingly identify with the Empire and be willing to follow orders at any cost, no matter what they're being ordered to do. That's totally different than you've been programmed to be this. I mean, that is scary stuff, man.
I'm glad you mentioned the Jedi, because that does underline why the Empire winds up having to transition from clones, in my mind, is because there are enough clones like Cody where they might have carried out that malicious, terrible order, or even Crosshair finds himself in the same space of questioning, well, wait a minute, am I doing the right thing? Because what you see with Cody and Crosshair and other clones who are struggling with this is the fact that they're, it goes back to Padme, right? That this war represents a failure to listen. We should be talking. Yeah. These clones, they're not fighting for, the same government. It's under new management. And all of the sudden, simply by continuing their mission, they're fighting against the very thing that they were created for, even though they don't realize. Some of them might not realize it, but a lot of them, we find even in the mess hall, that the two clones talking about the bill coming up for the conscription, and they're looking at it from a much more self-interest vantage point of saying it's bad news for us, which we know it is, but it's also all the way down to the non-special clones, like the ones we don't know on a personal basis. Every grunt is feeling that the rug is being pulled out from underneath them. Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of this episode is, again, it really does such a great job of building off where we were in the first two episodes. And then just continuing to kind of ramp up the tension that we're feeling and where the galaxy is. And, and then on top of that, the whole mission that Crosshair is given is to go to this planet and make sure that it's subdued for the Empire. Even though this planet wasn't part of the Republic ever, it was a separatist planet. It's kind of out of the way anyway. And yet the Empire wants it, and it's going to have it, and, we see all of the attitudes we were kind of talking about as well in that, in Ruins of War, with the way in which Rampart acted. We also see that with the new governor here. He's basically just a petulant child being given control of a planet and, willing to do whatever it takes, run roughshod over the population, just as long as it's subdued the way he wants it and he's in power. And you see then Crosshair being willing to pull the trigger at the end. And Cody won't, because Cody realizes this is wrong. This is evil. And the beauty of the episode is that you can see that Crosshair is struggling, but he's just willing himself to not struggle.
Well, it's the box that anybody finds themselves in. To back yourself out of something that you have convinced yourself to believe is right it's impossible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You can present people night and day, black and white examples of why what they're doing is supporting a bad thing, but they'll dig in their heels. Crosshair has to dig in his heels because the alternative is, horrifying in its own right. And additionally, to go back to Cody, you point out Cody can't do it. Again, Cody worked with some of the most noble and heroic Jedi in existence.
Right.
That rubbed off on him. And it shaped him to be that way and to have those questions just so in the marrow of his bones because he saw how Jedi worked to de-escalate things. Maybe not Anakin, but most Jedi worked to de-escalate things. And additionally, the real horror of everything is that they're not fighting mechanics when they're talking to that governor. When they're shooting droids, we can abstract that and be like, it has limited autonomy. It can't really think. It's just a programmed machine. It can't question orders.
Right.
This is supposed to be the difference. That two human beings in a moment like this can say, okay, maybe we don't need to get out of this by shooting each other, right? Shooting a machine is one thing. Now, let's set aside the whole thing that L3 introduces to the mix and 3PO and R2 and that sort of stuff. But, it's just a different sort of thing. And I mean, that's why I look at this as a short film. I don't even need the rest of the Bad Batch series for this to be an incredible episode.
Yeah.
This is simply one character's journey through a changing environment. And that's what I think really elevates this one so darn much. And it's so many moments handled so incredibly well. It holds for the right amount of time. Crosshair holds for the right amount of time before he takes the shot.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you this, I think one of the interesting things is that, I mean, I guess it's not really a question. I'll just put it out there and just sort of get your thoughts on it too. But so many times in a situation like this, we expect the bad governor, the Imperial guy, to get shot instead, to have the trooper turn on or shoot both of them or something like that. And instead, it's not that clean solution where at least we know the terrible bureaucrat got shot. It's no. Everybody lost on this one.
Yeah, I think that is the thing, again, that really sets this episode in terms of what we were talking about, I think, in the previous episode where, season 2 is differentiating itself from season 1. And I think in like you mentioned, the Clone Wars have kind of trained us to see mostly the bad guys get what they deserved a lot of times, and the good guys to prevail. And we're in that place in the Star Wars galaxy where the bad guys win all the time, 98% of the time, And I mean, I say that on purpose. It's like there's so few wins, and for those that are on the side of righteousness, right? And what is good. And that's the place that we're in. And to see, of course, our character of Crosshair struggle with, but still try and leave no doubt that he's going to obey orders. Good soldiers follow orders. And that he's going to continue to do that is so heartbreaking. But I think one of the things that makes this feel, like you mentioned, the idea of almost like it's its own short film, is that this episode is so cinematic in the way that it's lit, in the way that it's shot, and the composition of the shots. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one of those places where it's like they're just literally showing off what they can do. But they're showing off in a way that brings to light everything they're trying to do for the characters by having a lot of shots where there's not a lot of light. You know, like it's just the lighting, the composition of the shots, the choices of how the action is shot, like every single aspect of this episode feels like it's been meticulously gone through with a pick. You know, like it's phenomenal.
Yes, and it's one of those things where not a single shot feels utilitarian.
Exactly.
And what I mean by that is it's not just a bridge shot. It's not just, oh, we need something to fill in here. It's everything has such a deliberate nature about where the camera's placed. And like you said, the lighting and all of that sort of stuff. But I think also this is an episode where the score goes next level because I hear aspects of Göransson, I hear aspects of Zimmer, I hear Blade Runner 2024 in it, I hear Tenet in it during an action sequence, and I'm not saying that to diminish it. I'm saying just like in the original trilogy, when I hear the opening go when the Star Destroyer flies over chasing the blockade runner, I'm hearing Mars, the bringer of war. Right. I'm hearing Venus, goddess of love in Princess Leia's theme. I'm hearing those things in there because it's tapping that familiarity. And that, I think, is another masterstroke in the episode.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I would listen to the score for this specific. This is why it feels like a short film again. I'd listen to the score for just this episode. I would just have this on the background and just listen to it repeatedly while I'm working.
Yeah. No, I think you calling out that is a big part of why this episode works. And specifically, I think it is the Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack scape.
Did I say 2024? I did, didn't I?
Maybe.
I'm sorry. I'll throw myself on the fire on that one. I meant 2049. Blade Runner 2020.
It's that feeling, like you bringing that up. It is that feeling that truly, I think, makes this. It puts you in that mindset, especially. I just rewatched that movie, and that movie has that morose. Like feeling the crushing weight of just how hopeless things are. And that is exactly what this episode is doing. And I think that's one of the things that just makes this feel so special. That and as we're mentioning, every single little part of this episode is playing into the greater whole. And like you mentioned, there's legitimately nothing that's extraneous. Like it even like I love the shot at when Cody and Crosshair meet, and they're right in front of the wall there of the lost clones, the clones that have been killed, and then at the end they're having their conversation in front of that wall. And it just the choice of that means so much because we're also watching these clones be replaced. They will get forgotten, basically. And they will just be a thing that people then reference, the Clone Wars. But nobody thinks about the clones themselves.
And I think that I'm glad you mentioned them meeting in front of that wall, because one of the nicest touches is the fact, because we talk about how the color palette shifts and everything, is Cody's in his uniform we recognize, but he's unrecognizable because it's no longer orange and white. It's
exactly
gray and white.
Yeah.
we're seeing that color drainage that Lucas specifically called out. You see the color and creativity draining out from everything. And then they're cast in relief with that orangish wall behind them. So you see them stand out in terms of their lack of color.
Yes.
And even the fact that the way that first conversation plays, especially in the context of what happens later, but you can tell right off the bat, Cody's sounding out Crosshair. Is this a guy who would desert with me?
Right. Yep.
There are certain questions. I'm just you have this sense that Cody is asking questions where he can say, I'm just asking questions, as opposed to saying, I was trying to get him to defect.
Exactly.
And just finding out if he had a friend from Clone Force 99 that could help him. And I mean, that's the thing, is like, to have an episode of any series speak like this, I'm going to say something potentially very controversial. Even with all of the stuff that I loved in The Mandalorian, especially seasons 1 and 2, and the great moments that I enjoyed with it and still enjoy with it, there's maybe one episode that I could talk on and on about all of the positives the same way I can with this one. And it's the one that Ahsoka's in, in season 2. So, it's very difficult because it can sound boring. And the thing that sucks is being in that box of trying to evangelize to somebody why they should be watching a show and have something like this where I legitimately, it's like being in that corner of saying, no, you don't understand. Just watch this one. Just watch this one. You'll get it. You'll understand why I love it so much. And it's like, I feel like this is one of those episodes where, like, if I could just get somebody to watch it, they'd be like, oh yeah, that is a little bit different. It's like, yeah. You get this. This is the dopamine rush you get from the series. Like, come on, let's watch it. That sort of thing.
Yeah. I think, what you're saying here, and I think in this episode, and the thing that makes this episode stand out, and I heartily agree with you in what you said. I don't really think it's all that controversial, unfortunately. And this is kind of where George Lucas was, which is, and I think the thing that he ended up loving about animation so much is that everything's under your control, and everything can play into exactly what you want it to be, with no limits, and yet figuring out what needs to be there and what doesn't need to be there is such a big part of this series. And in animation, right? And I think that's the thing, is that the animated team truly had found exactly, like, they've been doing this for so long, they know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And this is an episode, I think, that just really shows off that ability for them. I think that's the thing that we're seeing, and it's kind of phenomenal. Right? Like it almost defies the ability to explain the greatness. And yes, like you said, it just could get boring in the superlatives, but that's the glory, I think, of the animated format, and the way in which the people that have been working on Star Wars animation for so long, they know what they're doing. And they know how to utilize every trick in the trade now to do it. And it seems like they just continue to get better. And that's the crazy thing. Because you see an episode like this, and you're like, oh, well, could this even be topped this season? No, it's going to be topped a few times, actually, which is insane.
It is insane. But even more insane is that while I could keep talking on and on about this, I know we're rounding third here. I'm going to just one last thing to encapsulate while I hear you talk what the artists are who put this episode, whole series, naturally, but episodes like this, this is sculpture. This is, they know the shape that they're going for, but they have sculpted something that is a beautiful work of art. And it just emphasizes, like you said, how tremendously this team is leveraging their experience and their vision to create something truly special and lasting in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. I mean, 100%, man. I mean, it's an incredible achievement. So I think, it's an incredible achievement.
It is. It is. But you know what? Another incredible achievement is how many places people can find you online, Master Rushing. So why don't you go through that list for them?
Yes, well, you can find me all over social media under the name Matt Rushing02. You can also find me here on the network with a show called Owlpost. Did that with Dre Kaufman. We talked about every single chapter of Harry Potter series. You can also find me over on the TFM network talking through a bunch of different things, but one of the best places to go is the 602 Club, where we talk about all of those franchises we love. You can also find me on doing a bunch of other shows there, so please check those out. But John, if people wanted to catch up with you and of course see what things are going on outside of aggressive negotiations, where would they find you?
It's a substantially shorter list, Master Rushing, and you can find me out there as Kessel Junkie. Have fun. The spelling's pretty obvious to me. And you, of course, can find me here on the network co-hosting a show with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell called House Lights, where we look at the work of different film directors. But all of that said, Master Rushing, I think it's time to tee up our next journey deeper into Season 2 of The Bad Batch. But to prep for it, we have to return to the temple. So I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.